Hello. This is Season 5, Episode 3 of The Ball Card Show, the sports podcast.
Or the Sports Collector.
I'm Jason Otero.
I'm Gary LeMaster.
And as always, we're glad to have you with us. Speaking of having you with us, it has been a little bit overwhelming seeing just how many of you have been engaging with the pod. We had no idea what to expect when we said we were going to put our ugly mugs out there on the internet forever.
I knew to probably expect some harsh commentary about my face.
Well, there'll be more to come
I'm
of
sure.
that, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
But seriously, thank you so much. I mean, the engagement with TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. We're trying to put all of our content out there to share it with you and make it as accessible as possible. And we've honestly been overwhelmed by how much of a response we've had. So I think we're just going to keep making this stuff.
Yeah, and if you guys keep engaging with it, it helps us. If you haven't yet, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff.
Yep.
We try not to beat you over the head with that other than right at the beginning of the episode and then,
Somewhere later on it's coming. Big week in the hobby. A lot happening, but let's just kick this off with like a positive, bright note because most people listen for the negativity, because there are some people out there doing podcasts that just focus on the positive, but they seem to be like the most disliked out there. We don't have to drop names.
I wasn't going to drop names.
You were thinking it.
I was thinking it, but I wasn't going to drop it.
It was on the tip of the tongue. But one thing that I have to say has been a huge uptick, in my opinion, from what I've seen over the last 5 years, 6 years or so that I've been actively engaged in the hobby. Hobby Rip Night nationwide appeared to have been a massive success for the LCS, for fanatics promoting things, for the engagement of fans with athletes. I don't know how much of this you watch, but I was watching clips from all over the country where...
Oh, yeah. Mike Trout bought a hobby box of Series 1 for
so cool.
everybody at the shop when he was there. It was like an $8,000 tab. So it was, 80 boxes of Series 1.
Yeah, he also signed a poster on the wall and gave it to a kid.
Yeah.
One of my favorites was David Ortiz had a stack of...
steroids? Just handing them out?
You talk bad about Big Poppy. We're going to have issues.
I have no issue with steroids. It doesn't bother me a bit.
Well, let's leave him out of that conversation for now.
Okay.
You're not Big Poppy. I don't know if you remember that commercial. Anyway, he had a stack of like Yankees autos. We're talking like Jeter, Judge.
Please tell me he
Andy
burned
Pettit.
them. Or...
If somebody could give him a Red Sox card, he gave them that like $500 auto.
That's nice.
The really funny part was, if you watch the video, there's like a lot of 10 to 12-year-old kids, and they handed it to him, and he's like, "Here, this is an autograph of Andy Pettit," and they're like, "Who?" But I thought it was really cool. Seeing the engagement from stars and athletes at the LCS. Most of them spent a good bit of time. I did hear a few horror stories of like celebrities that just popped in 2 hours late for 5 minutes and bounced, but they were there.
Well, it's kind of like we talked about last week. Fanatics is doing a really good job of trying to bridge that gap a little bit and create an experience, not just collecting cards, but this kind of experience that goes along with it. They
had a product that one of the local shops here in Columbus area mentioned in one of their videos today, but this as a junk wax era kid, like they had the Topps Hobby Rip Night binders, and it was just like branded Topps.
Yeah.
But for some reason to me, like just knowing that old school binders where you can lose like all of your dermises if you don't like line it up right or back a little bit.
You can also destroy every corner on your cards.
It's neither here nor there at this point, but the whole idea was that you would build out the Topps Series 1 set. I love that feel. I love that was there. I think that Hobby Rip Night is a success. I don't have anything critical to say of it. I'm trying to think of what there could be on the negative side.
No,
and I just haven't.
I don't know that there is.
Anything.
I mean, anytime that you can get people excited about the hobby and coming together in community like that, it's going to be successful. And it's a really smart move by Fanatics from a standpoint of a lot of these smaller LCSs, they have no marketing budget.
Yeah.
Some of that's because they don't have a marketing budget. Some of it's because they have no concept of how to market. This is something that Fanatics is doing to help market their shop as well, which in turn helps them sell more product to that shop. But it does give some of those smaller local shops a boost, which is a really positive thing.
And I think it's an overall net positive just to see so many people talking about the hobby. Hobby Rip Night tends to be something where you see a lot more kids showing up to that. I think that's a great thing. And again, Fanatics has made it really clear. Their goal, like their big picture goal, is to just grow collecting worldwide. And this is just one of the ways that happens. So thumbs up for me. I think it was a good deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
We actually have a lot of positive things to talk about in hobby news, but let's get into some negative first.
Yeah, let's just really grind it down.
So according to sources that I read on the internet, which that means that it's
obviously true.
Clearly, because I did my own research. But apparently, there was a licensed Messi product pulled out of a pack.
When he says Messi product, we're talking about Lionel Messi, the soccer player.
Yeah, not
just it was a mess. You said it was a Messi product.
Is that a joke?
No, I was trying to clarify because if somebody isn't a soccer person, they may not have any idea at all what you're talking about. And you just kind of rolled into it. And the word Messi has a lot of different connotations, the least of which is a person's
really glad
last
that
name.
You're spelling that out for everyone.
You're welcome.
Anyway, so somebody opened this pack. They hit the auto. They sent, which is a massive card. For those of you who don't know who Messi is,
it is a massive card.
It's a massive card. The fact that it's an autograph. I mean, his base stuff out of products from a few years ago, $10-$20 just for base cards. Like,
yeah.
The collectability worldwide compared to just in, the States. Anyway, it goes to PSA. It is not authenticated. It is autographed. It isn't a licensed product. It is right out of the pack.
Pack pulled.
And they did not authenticate it because they are not convinced that Messi himself signed the card. So what does that imply? They believe that this was just like Luca that had mom signing
and
the card.
Mom was signing a lot of his rookie autos.
Messi may have had a sibling or a family member or a friend signing that for him. What makes this a little bit more tricky is while PSA said we can't authenticate this autograph, there are other autographs out of that exact same set and product that they've already slabbed that they do not plan on deactivating.
Well, and what's really nuts about it is if you look at the back of the card, it says either Panini or Topps. It says guarantees the authenticity of this autograph. So at the very least, the person who hit this has a very strong case to go to Topps or Panini, whoever created the product. I'm not sure what product it was from, and say, hey, you owe me for the card. You owe me for the lost grading fees. Mm-hmm. You owe me for the time. There's a contract here that says you guaranteed this. Yep. One of the things that makes Upper Deck, when it comes to autographs, still kind of the king of the mountain is they still have a representative from the company witness every signature.
Yeah. Do you feel like PSA will do anything more about this issue with these products for Messi's auto? Is it going to call more into question? Or, I mean, I guess I'll play devil's advocate here. There's no reason that it couldn't be that particular auto. But it would be a sticker auto, wouldn't it?
Not always. It may not be a sticker auto. And that's the other thing about autograph authentication. It's an opinion.
When they sit him down, when Messi sits down to sign, I have not seen, I'm sure it's possible, I have not seen a single video where an athlete signs one autograph in a session and that's it. That's what's hard for me to believe.
The only ones that are happening like that are like the MLB debut patches. But they make a big deal out of that.
I saw them make the video of like Ellie signed his.
Yeah, almost every big name
They also have signed about 300 other autos by the time they get to that one-on-one moment.
And the other thing to keep in mind, too, with a lot of this stuff, for example, Messi's a really good example. Jordan's another good example. The guys who are on that level, they're not signing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, for example, you get some of these rookie baseball players, Bowman product, these guys are signing 10,000 cards because Topps is paying them $5 a signature, right? They're probably paying Messi $1,000 a signature.
Yeah.
So they're not, if he signs 1,000 cards, that's $1 million.
Right.
That is getting sunk into that. Jordan the same way. Like they're paying Jordan a lot for every signature Upper Deck is. So there's a little more ability to get a hold of that. The thing that's surprising to me is if you're paying that much that it's not being witnessed.
Yeah.
That's the part
that needs to be happening for sure.
That's a little sketch to me. So,
all right, back to some, I think, positive news.
okay.
So at the time I initially wrote this, there was a night last week where 3 cards in a couple different auction houses all auctioned for over $1 million in the same night. And I pulled up the link. And
Big boy cards.
Big boy cards. I know there was a LeBron. I believe there was I think there was a 52 mantle. It was a vintage baseball. Oh no, it was a Babe Ruth, and then it was another GOAT. I can't remember if it was basketball or whatever. But
chances are it was basketball.
That's a little bit like COVID-ish vibes to see 3 cards pop off for that kind of money in one night.
It is, but here's the thing. The one thing that I've seen, and we've talked about it a little bit, but the one thing that I've seen is the kind of bifurcation of what's happening in the hobby. There's a big spike in sales on the low end of stuff. We talked about that last week with Whatnot. There's also a big spike on the ultra high end.
Yeah.
That middle ground is still repacker central, not so much collector central.
Yeah. Which, when you go back through the comments, there were some of you commenting, especially on TikTok. We talked about Whatnot versus eBay. It was interesting. Some of you were like, oh, yeah, I switched from eBay to Whatnot, and I've been killing it ever since. I made more in 2 shows than I made in 2 months on eBay. And then there's others of you that are like, I have never been more discouraged in all my life than when I moved everything to Whatnot. So I do think that there are factors involved. Like Whatnot is not just, do you have cards you can sell? You have a show. You have to build a community. You have to be a little bit entertaining. You have to be reasonable with pricing. You can't make people feel bad if you're losing on a card. Like there's a lot of factors in that. But what you're selling is really going to matter. I hopped on today to do a little bit of sourcing for a show coming up, and it was either high end, which was going at or above comps, or low end, which was just way too low for me to even want to mess with.
Right.
So I do see what you're saying there, but I do think it's a positive thing to see overall for the hobby. The big cards are still out there with that, it's not like now these ones like a vintage Babe Ruth. Or
rarity
a
will
LeBron.
always drive.
Like it's not like you're just going to go buy a pack.
It's probably an exquisite RPA,
that kind of stuff.
That kind of stuff. Yeah.
But there's still really big cards out there. Speaking of that, out of a pack that we could afford to get into,
okay,
the Caitlyn Clark, 1-of-1 gold vinyl sells for over $200,000.
Yeah.
Verified sale, right? And you mentioned that there was a Facebook sale verified.
Yeah. So a true gold.
Yeah.
Did $80,000 on Facebook so 3 days ago.
My question for you, without us diving into a long tirade, was there's been many a video made of this, but does this have implications on the WNBA market in the near future?
No.
That was a quick answer.
Well, here's why. It has implications on Caitlyn Clark's market. There's nobody else in the WNBA like Caitlyn Clark. They tried to make Angel Reese into that. I don't know whether you watch very much WNBA. I've actually watched a little bit of it. Angel Reese is not very good. There aren't very many players who are very good. Mm-hmm. Caitlyn Clark is. Caitlyn Clark, in my opinion, right now, from a investment standpoint, is as safe of a buy as you can possibly make. Wow. Because unless there's some type of catastrophic injury, she is going to go down as the Michael Jordan of women's sports.
Yep.
The end. Full stop.
The Caitlyn Clark of women's sports.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's
absolutely.
Across the board, she's going to go down as the GOAT.
What if I told you that the collectability of the WNBA is much higher and more liquid than you're expecting?
Oh, I don't disagree with you.
Not on high end, because I think
yeah.
There's only a few players. You know, there was an announcement like Diana Taurasi, after 20 years, retired this week. There are some players that are thought of. Sue Bird sells like crazy. But, like, honestly, especially the low end, like, when I sell one of those, I usually sell 10 of them.
Yes, and I was going to say, it's
almost like wrestling. Like, if somebody's in that lane, they really collect it.
It's not surprising to me, although it is a market that I think is almost wholly formed of online purchases. I set up at shows every single week. I get 100 requests for wrestling for every one request for WNBA stuff.
Now, you do get requests for Caitlyn Clark.
Yes, I do get requests for
regularly,
Caitlyn Clark, and I sell a lot of. I will buy any Caitlyn Clark card and I will sell it.
Yeah,
but outside of a Caitlyn Clark,
yeah.
No, it's just not there. People come up, hey, do you have Caitlyn Clark? Do you have Caitlyn Clark? Nobody comes up and says, do you have Angel Reese? Nobody comes up and says, do you have Paige Beckers? Right. Nobody comes up and says, do you have Sue Bird or Diana Taurasi? It's, do you have Caitlyn Clark? Yes, I will always have some Caitlyn Clark.
Yeah,
for that reason.
I'm happy that her card went for $230K. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, and I was the true gold going for 80 when the one of one did 230 is
strong.
That tells
strong
me that
to quite strong.
That tells me that one of one will probably hit golden at some point during the WNBA playoffs if the Fever is in there.
Yeah,
and they'll make money on it.
It's a big investment.
It is, but everything in life though is a matter of perspective.
Was it graded? I didn't see. Was it authenticated at least?
I don't know. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I can tell you that everything though is a matter of perspective. $10 is a huge amount of money to some people.
Sure.
$100 is a huge amount. $234,000 is not very much money to some people.
Right. Yeah.
It just isn't. So if they're like, if I can take $234,000 and put it into this card for 3 months and turn it into $400. Well, that sure seems like a pretty smart investment.
Right.
So barring some type of horrifyingly catastrophic situation happening, I think Caitlyn Clark is about as safe. She's on that Mahomes level as far as safety of investment in the sports cards. As safe as a sports card investment can be.
Good qualifier.
Right. As safe as a sports card investment can be.
Yeah.
She is it.
Yeah.
So
speaking of that, have you seen, we mentioned it last week, talked about it a little bit. Have you seen much of a market change for Wemby yet?
Yeah. Immediately right after they shut him down for the season, there were some people trying to liquidate fast. I've seen as low as 30% off. It's kind of settled into what I thought it was going to be, 15, 20%. Yeah. There's some guys that have some big Wembys that are just trying to cash out of them because they don't want to hold them for a year. They want to take that money and do something else with it. So if you're in the market for a big long hold, like I've seen guys selling cards that comp at $6,400-$6,500 for $5,000, $52,000. If you're in the market for a long hold. But again, one of the things you really want to keep in mind if you're going to do that, do not buy it on eBay because you're killing yourself. You're setting a comp and murdering yourself. Yeah. Just don't do it.
I mean, yes and no. You're hurting yourself if you're trying to move it to anybody that is not just PCing him.
Right.
It can still fetch what you want it to when you have somebody that's like the end user that's collecting that card. So I think you could still say, yep, I bought it. This is that card. I'm going to need this for it. But if you're wanting to move it quickly or having the flexibility to move it quickly, that's not going to be available.
Yeah, and it better be a 10 or 25 or less if you're going to do that because there's going to be other ones available. And the minute that you set that comp, other people are going to be like, well, now I got to lower my price because I'm not going to sell otherwise. So
brings a good point. I wonder... are we going to see more comprehensive aggregates now that we have more than just one or two big platforms? Now that we're seeing more auction houses getting ultra modern.
Card Ladder already pulls from all those places.
Yes, sometimes.
Well, Card Ladder always does. Now, Alt will miss some. 130 point has two different spots you can search. This is really important. If you're a 130 point person, you don't want to pay for a subscription to some place, totally fine. Two things you want to keep in mind. One, you're only going to get 90 days worth of data. Yeah. So if a card hasn't sold for a while, you may see no comps. The other thing you want to keep in mind is if you're using that, when you go into 130 point, there are two buttons that you can choose. You can choose just eBay sales, or you can choose the top button, which is pull from every place.
Yeah.
Pick that one. Pull from every place for lots of reasons. And if you're still just using eBay to look at sales, also do yourself a favor. 60 days or so ago, eBay stopped crossing out best offer accepted.
Yeah.
So it just shows a big number.
Yeah.
And
That's a
it
problem.
may have been sold for drastically less. And if you go to 130 point, you're going to see a huge swing in that. So
I guess my main point with this is there's not one spot anymore where you're pulling all the data. And a lot of people with higher end stuff especially, are considering alternatives to eBay for that. That used to be like, unless it was so huge that it had to go to a golden type of situation, was it Heritage, Pristine, some of those. Like,
and say it Card Ladder even pulls from My Slabs.
Yeah.
It pulls from Heritage. It pulls from Golden.
We did have some diehard My Slab fans.
That's awesome because it's a great platform.
I just wish there were more buyers
Yes,
there.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's what you said. You're like, I just wish there were more buyers there because it really is a great platform.
Yeah. All right. Want to shift gears just a little bit. We had mentioned that a couple weeks ago that PSA is going to be more stringent on what it takes on centering to be a PSA 10. So let's talk a little bit more about PSA 9s. Are they a good buying opportunity? Because this seems to be like a heated debate, or at least there's a lot of engagement online with this. People thinking they found a secret. People saying, no, it's only going to drive up the value of the 10s more. It's not going to affect the 9s. You know, new 10s become 10s, like the standard. 10s up to this point are basically going to be viewed as 9s. 9s before that, are they down to nothing? Like, how does this play out, and what are 9s going to be as far as the opportunity that presents itself going forward because of this?
Yeah, I think that overall it's going to take a little bit of time, but the market for 9s is going to rise. Mm-hmm. It's going to have to rise because there aren't going to be anywhere near as many 10s. I've got a sub on its way back that I had a 20% gem rate on.
Yeah.
Which is just brutal. I usually average about a 73, 74% gem rate.
Yeah.
20% gem rate. There was a 6 in this sub.
Wow.
Just brutal. And you know how I go over stuff. I'm not sending something that's a 6. So the market for 9s is going to have to go up a little bit. And something really important to note here. Again, we talk a lot pre-COVID, post-COVID. And there's one of the things that really drives me nuts, and this is a side tangent, but it's related. If you came back into the hobby during COVID, don't let people make you believe you're some kind of not real hobby person. Mm-hmm. Are there people who came back in the hobby during COVID that make me crazy? Yes, because they pretend they know more than they do. But that doesn't have anything to do with coming back to the hobby during COVID. That's probably just the type of person you are. I mean, call a spade a spade. You're probably just
probably
the kind of
dumping all of your stimulus money into a hobby will make you want to be an expert real quick.
So, but there is a knowledge gap that exists. And prior to late 2020, when everybody was grading everything, like every base card under the sun, 9s were about a 20 to 30% boost overall.
Yeah.
10s were about 3x, right? Then during COVID, 10s went to like a 5 or a 6x, and 9s were a little bit overall, not much. And then as the market started getting even more and more flooded, 9s were worth less than raw.
Yeah.
10s have settled back into being about 2.5 times. I think that this change that PSA is making in the long run is going to be very healthy for the hobby. In the short term, it's going to be very painful for some people.
You can't tell me that part of the discussion, if I'm in California working at PSA and having a meeting with the graders, is like, look, we don't hand out 10s anymore. Like, part of the discussion is going to be stricter. So I would especially expect it to be harsher grading for this next 6 months, especially because we're trying to make a statement. Now, I have a theory of what I think is coming next.
Okay.
And if they really want to maximize the profit opportunity here, they will take advantage of this. For the next year, people are going to be in pain over this new centering. They're going to say, I want to go to SGC, and then they're going to find out it's always been like that.
Yeah, it's always
been
55-45.
But PSA is opening the window now to reintroducing the subgrade 9.5. And I think When a 10 becomes harder to grasp, you will have an option for an upcharge at a subgrade. Not the worst idea if you're PSA.
I don't
a 9.5.
Well, that's not when you say subgrade. Most
subgrade.
people
I don't mean all four.
Yeah,
what I mean
okay,
is you
that's
can
what I'm
have a
saying.
9.5. You
well,
can have an
PSA
8.5.
still has half grades. They just don't give out 9.5s. You can get an 8.5. You can
Yeah,
get a 7.5.
the
You can get a
9.5
6.5.
would be really interesting to me, and I wouldn't be surprised if it would be introduced. Not immediately, but hey, we hear you. Some of these cards are really close to 10s, but we just can't give them a 10 yet. It's a 9.5.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I think it opens the door for that. It would be a money grab, but from what I understand, they're backed up again.
They're backed up a little bit. The order that I just had went from received to grading in 3 days. It went from grading to assembly in 2.5 days. And it was in assembly for 3.5 weeks.
Yeah.
So I don't know where the process. I think the other thing that this is going to open up is, and I've already seen it a little bit on some bigger cards. BGS has a little bit of a window to maybe save themselves if they're smart enough to do it. They've got a little bit of a window to try to save themselves. Will they? I don't know. They've had about a 3-year run of just shooting themselves in the foot
Right.
every time they turn around.
What would you do if you're BGS? What would be your strategy to try to capitalize on this moment?
Probably be threefold. First,
Threefold.
yeah, I've
I
actually
just dropped this on him.
I've
Been
actually
thinking about
thought
it.
this through.
Okay, let's hear it.
First and foremost, marketing blitz that involves some mea culpa.
Say it for the dumb people.
Oh, we know we've dropped the ball the last couple of years. There have been some internal things going on. We are under new ownership. Our previous CEO is going to prison.
Mm-hmm.
We're under new ownership. We are committed to, and this is the line I would take. It would be a very Apple type commercial, but the gist of it, we are committed to reinvigorating the brand that Dr. James Beckett made a household name. Back in the day, people who weren't even in the hobby knew what Beckett magazine was.
Yeah.
So that would be first and foremost. The second thing that I would do is introduce a pricing tier that rewards people for grading with you. And then last but not least, consistent and meet your deadlines, whatever that takes.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can do that, they still have there's still a huge amount of the hobby who loves to have subgrades, who loves to know why the card got what it got.
Yeah.
And last but not least, I would make a 10 a 10, and I would get rid of the 10 and the black label. I would just have 10s and black labels.
I think one of the things they could do is they're potentially, this is probably never going to happen, but if they did this, one of the things they really should consider, as I'm affected by it right now, is this run of the BVG, the Beckett vintage grading, which if you haven't ever been down that rabbit hole, there were tons of early vintage grading slabs that
Got
when
dual cert.
Thank you for interrupting me and finishing the sets. Get 2 weeks in a row. That when they merged the database, it lost almost all of the early ones. So like I have a 66 Cassius Clay.
Beautiful card.
Beautiful
High
card,
grade.
unbelievable color. It's an 8.5. It's the Panini. It's the little. I mean, it's a gorgeous card. It starts with a 0000, which they just ran in that order. But if you would search up the code right now, it says that it is a mid 80s Cal Ripken
It's
Jr.
an 82 Cal Ripken tops traded, right?
Yeah. So it's not right.
And they've acknowledged that.
They've acknowledged it. You could send it back in. Here's what it would cost. If they took a step forward with the people that got burned on that, because remember, there weren't all these. A PSA was not the way it wasn't viewed like this.
No.
You had SGC with the green labels, and you had Beckett. You had, what was the other 90s one that now we have it in some like retail products, but
BCCG,
which
but
was
it's Beckett.
It's Beckett,
Yeah,
but it was
yeah.
off of there. But addressing that in some regard, hey, we will re-slab this for free, or we can't do it for free. We'll do it for $5. The issue
and we're not
going to
make you regrade it.
That's what they're wanting to do, is they want people to submit it for regrading. Even if they said this, as long as the color holds up, if there's not fading, but like whatever it would be, they have to do something. They have to extend an olive branch here to say, this is part of us screwing up. But I agree with you.
There's a window here.
The marketing opportunity is there for them to be like, when you think cards and you think, growing up and the memories you had, going through cards with your dad or your grandpa showed the collection.
Synonymous.
Beckett was out, and so was your binder. And when you had a trade night back in the day, you had the Beckett out. When a new Beckett dropped, the first thing I would do would look up the 1985 top set and see what it was going for, the year I was born, and I would track that.
Yeah.
And until the steroid scandal, that was a solid. It was doing really well, but they do go hand in hand. So I agree, but it's like now or never for them.
No, for sure.
They're really on thin ice. And the reality is this, that beautiful card I have, which is very hard to find in a high grade, it's like it has the plague because it's in that Beckett slab. And, 5 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case, even with that vintage grading issue. But that's the reputation that's come along. Now, one thing I will say that I've noticed with Whatnot growing like crazy is a huge influx of Beckett slabs with low-end stuff just because of quick turnarounds and a lot of 9s and 9.5s. I don't know if you've all seen this as you're on Whatnot, but you'll have cards that are like, clearly these have all been sent off in the last couple months. It's a cheaper, way of grading it, getting them in. So it's not like they aren't doing any business, but it'd be nice to see them create a little bit of competition in that market. And
the slab is still a really nice slab, other than the fact that you can murder somebody with it. It does have some sharp edges.
It does have sharp edges.
It does have some sharp edges.
They are pretty slabs, and I do like subgrades. I think that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about Whatnot. There was an update this last week. We're still waiting in on what's true and what's not true about this. There's a lot of content that's been put out, but essentially, to some degree, Whatnot has made it difficult or impossible for people to view previous shows. Used to be that you would be able to pull up any break and watch it. From what I understand, whenever I've purchased through a break, if I wasn't able to watch the whole thing, I could go back and watch the replay. From what I understand, that is not available. Some sources are saying it's not available at all to anyone. Some sources are saying it's available to sellers, but it's not available on mobile. You would have to do it through a web platform. But here's the question we need to ask. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Why do we not want buyers to be able to, or spectators to be able to watch a previous show? So let's go from a positive perspective.
Well, it's
first.
also interesting to say that this only applies to breaks. I still have a video receipt when I buy singles.
Yes.
I just go in and click, and it shows me the single that I bought.
Is yours clipped off to where it just shows where you bought that auction, or is it?
So, well, sometimes it is, and sometimes it's the whole daggone
From what
thing.
I understand, it's supposed to be condensed down to just that clip, which that makes sense. I'm good with that. But in stark contrast to our conversations last week about eBay sticking it to the seller, this kind of feels wrong to me, and I can't help but feel like it's a little bit. Is it a coincidence that just a short time after this happened with Backyard Breaks, and people were pulling up this video left and right and clipping it off, and you can't put it away and hide it, like it's out there. Is this in any way related to that happening? Maybe.
It's hard to think it isn't, the timing.
But it's also stupid to think that if one person has the video, we're not in 1995 anymore.
Yeah, you can't put it away.
Yeah, it's not a VHS tape that you got to go track down and, can we convert this to DVD, and then upload it? And, it's once it's out there, it's out there. And if buyers can see it, that was going to happen anyway. But also just a quick reminder, those of you defending Backyard Breaks and our socials, you're an idiot.
Yeah, 100%. Like I told you guys a few weeks ago, if you're defending anything that happened there, we don't want you here.
Yeah.
Hey, period. I don't care.
But thank you for chiming in, especially TikTok. I know we're going to get some comments, and I just want you to know we will be restless at night thinking about them. We will be up concerned with your comments about it. But it does seem a little bit like the timing for Whatnot doesn't look that great. It seems like there's less transparency for the buyers. I think it will affect some. I think the difference with this and other platforms is that community aspect. So for first-time buyers, it may be frustrating that you don't have that transparency.
Right.
But it seems like this is really a platform that cultivates repeat buyers and a community that wants to be able to trust who they're buying from. Now, I've had instance where I did not have the customer service I expect or Whatnot says needs to be provided, and Whatnot took care of it as soon as I put in a complaint. I wasn't told to kick rocks. I reached out to the seller. They were like compliant because they found out that I had already reached out to Whatnot, but it certainly doesn't look good that you can't go back and watch these. I'm sure technologically it's expensive to save all these.
Your storage is not cheap.
Yeah.
And streaming that storage is not cheap.
I saw a comment. Somebody said, it's like 99 cents, bro. Just add more cloud storage.
That's not how that works at scale. That's not how it works at scale.
So, it'll be interesting to see if that becomes more of a story, but it sure doesn't seem transparent for the buyer that you can't go back and watch these shows.
Yeah, and I think that Whatnot will figure it out if they get enough pushback. Because at the end of the day, transaction fees are where they make their money.
Yeah.
So they'll if they get enough pushback, it'll be interesting. I know that consumers have already been speaking with their wallets when it comes to the backyard break stuff. About once every 2 days, Jason just sends me a screenshot with 4 people in a backyard breaks room. Just like, yep, they're eating it right now.
I do feel for the employees that aren't bad people.
No,
but
I agree.
The good news is this. You've been a breaker for the largest breaking company in the States, as far as I'm aware. There may be others that own other groups, but like independently, like your resume is locked.
Yeah,
and the beautiful thing is, with that type of community, you could probably take those buyers with you if they like hanging out with you.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. I'll give a quick eBay update. It got a lot of time over the last week, a lot of videos. For those of you that do not care about this at all, you have been hit with a lot of content around it. In the last week, we went from 200 orders that were unscanned to 0 orders unscanned, back to 90 orders that were unscanned. Now that number's
not actually unscanned.
Well, yes. However, so I found these third-party tracking sites where sometimes it didn't show up as any scans on eBay, but it would show up on these other websites. I made a video. It's on our YouTube if you haven't seen it yet. Check it out. It walks you through how to do that. Some of these new unscanned ones I had today had no scans on eBay, but they already had an initial hub scan in Columbus, Ohio, and I was able to send that to buyers to say, hey, I know it says there's nothing, but it's on the way. Here's a screenshot. So anyway, yesterday I had to make 3 phone calls where I was told we're not sure that we can pull that down. I'm not sure that we can do anything about those.
Phone calls to eBay.
Yes. Yeah. And 2 Facebook chats. Finally, the last one, the only option I had left to say was, listen.
Full Karen.
I had to. I had
Full
to.
Karen.
I just said, hey, it's as simple as this. I know that you don't need my store, but I am going to take down all 40,000 listings if you don't address this now. And okay, well, here's the ticket, and we've already told, and they kept giving me the same spiel. It'll probably happen in the next month. We have said we're going to protect them. Hopefully, it's done before the 20th. And I just said, there's no hopefully. You either take care of it or you don't. And when you know, about 15 minutes later, there it goes down to, I think there's 13 left on that. Now, just because they cleared unscanned does not mean that the buyers see scans. So there are still probably 100 orders out there that are on the way, but buyers are starting to shoot me claims left and right.
And the most important part of this to understand is that eBay is aware that this is their problem. This is an eBay problem. This is not a USPS problem. This is not a seller problem. This is an eBay technology problem. They are aware of it, and I believe they've issued a statement about it.
It's out there now.
But they are still trying to hold sellers accountable for it, which is mind-blowing.
Well,
to me.
now they're saying, we did say that. Now I have to bring it up. They don't offer it.
Right.
And there have been some of you that reached out to me like, hey, I asked and they didn't. Like, you have to be willing to waste time doing that if it's important to you. When those 90 unscanned hit me, I went to like 95% on tracking validated and scanned in time, or scanned and whatever it is that shows that I didn't just print a label, I shipped it. And it took me down to 95.8%. Below 95%, you lose top-rated seller status and fees can go up. So I just said, hey, guys, it's as simple as this. If I end up losing top-rated seller status over your problem for items that I have shipped on time appropriately, then I'm shutting the store down. And that seemed to work. So this time, those were magic words. I don't know if I just wore them down. I don't know if that worked for you. But if you're willing to actually shut your store down, you might want to consider, letting them know that'll be your next step if they don't take care of it. Don't blame me if they don't do it. I'm just saying this is what worked for me.
Right.
This next few weeks, I'm going to begin pulling down any of the higher dollar items. I'm going to kind of let this, I'm right around 40,000 listings right now active. I've probably got another 2,000 to 3,000 to list. Probably not going to list anymore for a while.
Yep.
Just focusing on the show stuff.
It's more fun anyway.
Yeah.
It's way more fun.
Speaking of shows, this week in Amish country, Indiana, we will be at the Shipshewana Trade Night and at the show Saturday for a little bit as well. I've got to believe that some of you are going to be there.
It's actually a show on Friday night now too.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's not just Trade Night. Trade Night is from 8 to 10, but the show is running from 3 until 8.
Okay.
And if you have a VIP pass, you get in for that. Otherwise, I think admission on Friday is $10. I know for a fact that some of the biggest money in the country will be there on Friday night. So if you want the nice stuff, pay the $10 because it won't be there on Saturday.
Yep. I am going to be sourcing heavily for shows again. The business has all been in eBay. I'm not going to depend on one platform anymore. Before I had this eBay store, I was doing a lot of shows. A lot of Facebook thread sales were really popular there for about a year and a half on the low end stuff too. So I'm going to be targeting like $50 to $300 cards. Just trying to build out a couple nice showcases. From what I've heard of all the regional shows to the Midwest, this one's going to be a great one where I probably will see plenty.
Yeah, it's
and
an
have
awesome
a lot of
show.
opportunities to do that. So anything you're targeting. Any players, any sports, any margins, baby.
Anything
Liquidity
that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's really that simple. My buying is very simple. If it makes sense, I buy it, or if it's super cool and it makes sense, I buy it. I'll buy something that may sit for a little while if it's awesome.
The lower end, but not low end stuff that I'll be looking for is the Topps Chrome Vet low numbered from the new set.
Yeah.
I got a feeling that's going to hold up okay. Now, if it's overpriced, that's not going to happen, but there's going to be people that have ripped cases of that. There'll be a lot of that out. Low number, really popular vets. People are going to be building the rainbow on that. So I think that'll be like if there's another little niche I'm kind of messing with, which, by the way, I opened some retail. I think I did a Mega and Blaster of the Topps Chrome football. I liked it.
It's a good looking product.
Hit a couple Jaden Daniels, hit a patch, hit a Tom Brady X-Fractor, Brad Johnson, the Tampa Bay quarterback autograph.
Where did he play before Tampa Bay?
No clue.
Minnesota, baby.
Okay.
Yeah, he won a Super Bowl in Tampa, but he played Minnesota first. And he played in Washington, too.
Yeah.
How about that?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So
learn something new every day.
Yeah. Thanks for that. What else? Oh, Dwight Stevenson, low numbered. So
yeah,
cool stuff. But it does look just like Topps Chrome baseball, which I love. Like, keep it simple. Here's the variations. I would be okay with a few less variations, but now we're getting too picky. Right. We're making steps in the right direction with this. So we hope to see you out at Shipshewana. And then finally, one thing that we're wanting to do is when we get to 1,000 subs on YouTube
or on TikTok or on Instagram.
Well, we're going to be there on TikTok real soon.
Any of our platforms.
Okay.
We're going to do some giveaways. So we've got some 2024 Prism Football Blasters. We've got some slabs. So as soon as we hit 1,000 followers on any of these platforms, and then we'll do it again at 5,000, and it'll be a bigger one. And we'll do it again at 10,000, and it'll be a bigger one. But as soon as we hit 1,000 followers, 1,000 subscriptions on TikTok and on YouTube.
Yeah, got it.
We are going to randomly pull from that list, and we will reach out to you and say, hey, you won. We need your address so we can ship this to you. So make sure you're smashing those buttons for us. It helps us with the algorithm. It helps us as we're trying to build this thing out. Turn on notifications if you want to know when we publish new stuff. And we really appreciate you.
Yep. Look forward to it. Again, much love. We appreciate all the engagement that we've seen. And we'll be back again next week. I'd love to see you at Shipshawana come up and say hey to us. This has been the Ball Card Show, the sports podcast.
For the Sports Collector.
Bye now.
Peace.